welcome to the Hire Revolution. Our goal and purpose is to inspire and educate human resources professionals here in the U.S. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, and we are here today to discuss some very relevant and hot topics. We have human resources phenom Paul Falcone, who is a seasoned human resources executive and the author of 10 books, including 96 great interview questions to ask before you hire, 101 tough conversations to have with employees, good book, and 75 ways for managers to hire, develop, and keep employees. He's a sought-after guest on radio shows, TV shows, and is a featured speaker for SHRM. Paul, we are thrilled to have you here on our podcast today.
Thank you, Eve. I am too. It's great.
Let's talk about how companies are thriving and hiring amidst the COVID-19 crisis. You talk about, Paul, heading off individual and team disruption during the COVID-19 emergency. In your opinion, what is the general level of anxiety or angst that you're sensing out there, and is it justified in your opinion?
I think it is, Eve. Being in HR, you're in the trenches. So I think you can always have kind of a feel or a rhythm for how people are feeling about their jobs or the company or anything else. Most people that I'm talking to and what I'm seeing myself is the level of tension is very high these days. Now, we're 90 days in front of a presidential election, which is for a lot of people nerve-wracking because they don't know where it's going. You put the COVID piece on top of that. People are afraid to get sick. You've got people working from home who are afraid to return to work. At the time, companies are trying to get people back. And when you shake it all up and you mix it all in, there's a lot of social unrest out there, and it's finding its way into the workplace. So I do think it's very real when people are saying they're nervous, they're anxious these days. You can feel there's a tension. It's almost like there's some unexposed wires out there that are sometimes, snapping. They're kind of going off when you wouldn't expect it from people who normally don't act that way. So.
No, I think you're right on. And the question then is, how do you get ahead of that? I mean, if you're a frontline operational leader or a business owner, how do you get ahead?
Yeah. So you remember the picture we had of kids of, you hear about the Native Americans and they're sitting around the campfire and they're passing around the peace pipe and they talk. We've lost that. We've lost that ability to pass the peace pipe around and pass the wisdom from the elders to the younger generations. We've become so electronified, I don't know the word, but you know what I mean. Everything,
yes.
This and cable that and digital this, and I really think we need to talk more. And in times like this, when people are nervous, you cannot over communicate. So one of the things that I recommend, for example, is companies go through sexual harassment training or anti-discrimination training. And the HR person comes in and does a presentation, or an outside lawyer comes in and does the presentation. I think that's great. But I think the manager of a group or the manager of a team has to sit with people and say, okay, you guys, I want to talk about this. For us to do so, whatever you say, we will respect. But whatever you say has to be said in a constructive content, right? With other people's interest in mind. But I want to hear where you're coming from, because this really is important to me. And because it's important to me, I want it to be important to you. And I also want to make sure that we're all in agreement as far as how we're going to treat each other with respect. And how we're always going to have each other's backs, because no matter how tough it is out there, we're here for each other, and we've got to make sure we're tight and we know that we've got each other's backs. That concept, Eve, of having each other's backs is really important to me because it says a lot. And I think when managers can hear that, or I should say the employees can hear that from their manager, they realize that the manager is taking what is theory, what the HR guy is telling them or whatever, and turns it into something real. And the beauty of it is the manager is teaching the employees to pay it forward. When you become a manager, these are my expectations of you, because I think you can develop your own teams over time. So it's a really healthy way to do things. And it's just talking about things and giving people the freedom to talk about what their concerns are in a safe, open environment, preferably. You can do it one-on-one as well, but I think these group meetings are really important to kind of reset expectations and set the tone going forward.
And I can see how that would work probably most of the time. But when an individual causes disruption by acting out and appearing to bully or intimidate others or rile up everyone and instigate trouble, how do you handle it?
We can handle that too. That's the good news. Here's a scoop. when one person starts to exhibit those bullying behaviors as the alpha behaviors, alpha male, how you handle it as a manager becomes really important because everyone's watching.
Right.
And so what I think is a few rules. Number one, talk to that person in private. Don't do it in public. There's always that rule: you praise in public, but you censure in private. So
right.
you fall under the censuring, and we want to do that respectfully behind closed doors. The second thing is make sure you're using the word perception. Perception. Is not right, is not right, is not wrong. It's just what it is. You know how they say feelings aren't right or wrong? They just are. Just
right.
They used to call them public relations agencies. Now they call them perception management firms. The reality is this: perception is reality until proven otherwise.
Yes.
So to sit with the employee and say, Paul, look, from my vantage point, this is what it feels like. This is what I'm seeing out there. This is how it impresses me. And I'm concerned for you because the reality is if it's impressing me that way, it's probably doing so with some of your peers out there. And I don't know that that's in your best interests. So the reason why I want to have this is consider this more of a coaching conversation, an executive coaching conversation, whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line is I want to kind of emphasize the strengths that you have and help you mitigate some of those shortcomings that you may not be aware of. But from a perception standpoint, I have to hold you responsible for your own perception management. You are responsible, just like I am, for creating a friendly and inclusive work environment. And so the reality becomes, I have to raise your awareness about how you may be coming across, because you may not be aware of it. I've got to kind of hold you to the same standard that I hold myself, which is you're responsible for having each other's backs. And you have to make sure that people will come to you as a resource because they want to, and not in any way avoid you because that can have really long-term negative career repercussions. So let's talk about it. Tell me about what I'm telling you. Does it make sense? Does it resonate? How can I help? And all of a sudden you've taken something with a very delicate glove and you've gently turned this person into you're a problem child, or from you're a problem child to a, hey, you're worth my time in terms of giving you executive coaching to help you in your own career. And you'll be surprised. People will usually rise to that level of expectation. So a gentle approach. It's not disciplinary. I'm not saying it couldn't eventually become disciplinary, even may, but more people than not will respond to that call to rise up to how they're seen as a leader. Because the truth is they've got these alpha personalities. People follow that, or people will be repelled by that. They've got to change their sponsoring thought about who they are and what they can do. And if we can move them to that point where they see themselves as a force for good, it can help them their whole career. And then 20 years later, they'll be like, oh yeah, Paul Falcone was my favorite boss because he helped me see things in myself that I didn't even see. And it all comes together.
That's excellent. So that's the individual, Paul. What happens when the individuals as a team are at each other's throat, they're exhibiting toxic behaviors or otherwise refusing to cooperate with one another? How do you, as a leader, step in and turn things around?
You just fire them all. They're all gone.
Okay, end of interview. We got this. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. No, okay, so the seriousness, though, is when you've got people that are not getting along with each other and you can just feel the tension. How I've normally handled this is I call a group meeting. It's sitting around the campfire and passing around the peace pipe and kind of acknowledging what some of the issues are. But what I do is what I call a start, stop, continue exercise. And I usually do it with a piece of paper. Sometimes, depending on the size of the group, you can even actually write it out in advance. But usually the employees will kind of tell you. And then the first question is, what are we doing well? What do we want to continue doing? That's easy enough. And then the next question is, what do we think we want to continue? Well, what are you doing? What do you want to continue doing? It's fine. We're writing it all out. What do we want to stop in the group? What needs to end today? And all of a sudden you'll see that, well, we shouldn't be bullying and people shouldn't call rank and people shouldn't do this and do that. And you're writing this all down. At the end of that meeting, you can say, you guys, I totally agree. We are all on the same page. This works very, very well with groups. They'll all kind of fall under that. You're keeping control of the meeting. You're jotting down what you want to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing. And then what you tell them at the end of the meeting is twofold. Number one, I'm going to put this all in writing, you guys. Today's date is whatever, August the 1st. And August the 1st is the day I'm re-welcoming all of you back to the company. You all get a chance to start over, line in the sand, welcome to the organization. We're so happy to have you here. As far as I'm concerned, all the baggage that leads up to August 1st stopped on July 31st. August 1st, we're starting over again, and you all get a clean slate. The next thing is you have to forgive yourselves and forgive each other, because this thing did get out of hand. And I think, just being honest, we all could admit that. We want it to be better than it is. And then I want to capture this in writing, and I'm going to pass it out with my signature. And my signature is going to say that I commit to all of you that I will withhold these standards going forward. But you can't put me in a situation to violate my own agreement, because if you do, it's going to be a different conversation. And it's not this kind of peace talk. That will probably be attached to some kind of disciplinary warning. And I don't want to go in that direction. You're adults. I'm holding you accountable for this. But we need an agreement that as of August 1st, we're all starting over again.
Right.
You need permission to forgive yourselves and forgive each other. And we start over again. I'm not telling you to forget, but what I am telling you is the behaviors that were exhibited through yesterday end today, and we start over again. And it's so funny when you make those clear lines for people, when you give them that date in your head, when you put it in writing and say, this is what we've all agreed to that we want to stop, start, or continue doing. I'm not saying it fixes it forever, but it does. It will fix it for a while, because they realize you're taking it seriously, and you get a chance to reset expectations for everybody. You may need tune-ups every quarter, I don't know, but the reality is you've got that date, and they'll joke about that date for 5 years. Falcone was August 1st. Okay, it's true, but they remember what it is, and that's the main thing that you want to get through.
And you know what, Paul, on a personal level, I think that many people are not trained at home growing up on good conflict resolution. And so what you're bringing to the table for most people is something brand new to their life. And so you're not only helping them, I think, on a professional level, but obviously on a personal level as well.
I got a lot of practice as a kid, which is a very good thing. But the funny thing is, you're right, the path of least resistance is avoidance.
Yes.
And managers will sweep things under the rug and hope they fix themselves. And the reality is they rarely do. Right. You can do these things when they're minor impediments before they become these massive problems.
Right.
Just getting in there when you see it going a little bit off the rails and it's time to get everybody back on track again, that's the time to move in. But likewise, you can also do it when it's already off the rails. The start, stop, continue, when I usually use that for someone else's department, not for my own, because
of course not.
Happy. But you know, that's when it's usually come off the rails, and you can start them over again and reinvent that relationship.
Paul, thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. You have brought a lot of value to our listeners, I know, today on the Hire Revolution. Please tell us where we can get more information of you and get in contact with you.
Oh, thanks, sure. Yeah, everyone, I'd love a LinkedIn connection if you want to do that. I'm just Paul Falcone 1 on LinkedIn, so easy enough to find. And I have a website, which is paulfalconehr.com. Pretty apropos. But all my connections are on my website too, my phone number and everything else. So that would be the easiest one.
Excellent. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Hire Revolution, sponsored by Band of Hands. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on YouTube. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, and we'll see you next time on the Hire Revolution.